All right, good evening, everyone. I see several of you already waiting in the chat room, and we'll get started here in just a moment. We have an outstanding guest tonight I'm looking forward to talking to. Still waiting for Robert to hop in the Zoom. He usually comes in hot right at the time, so hopefully he'll be on in just a moment. And then we'll kick over and get going live. So it's holiday over there right now, right, Mark?
That's right. Yes, the end of Ramadan. So everything is just bracing for the return to normal life.
Yeah, and how long does that last?
So it's a month, and we've got now like about 4 days, long weekend for Eid, and then it's back to early starts and holiday time over.
Got it. Can you hear us okay, Rob?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, you still sound a little bit louder than Mark. Mark, I don't know if there's anything else you can do to...
Yeah, I can push it a bit further. I just don't want it, as long as it doesn't start clipping. How's about that?
Yeah, that sounds good. Now you sound the same level as
okay, cool.
All right. Rob, how are you tonight?
All right, how's it going?
Good. Vintage 1972.
Yep. All original parts.
Let me introduce Mark. This is Robert. Robert, this is Mark.
Hey, Rob.
Mark.
Rob goes by Phantom NJ, hence the Phantom behind him.
Ah, right. Yeah. Nice.
Let's see. What do I need here?
Thanks for joining us. Hey, good to see you, Zach. Good to see you, Cameron, in the chat early. Boba, my friend, Manda, been sitting here for a long time. We're going to click over here in just a moment. Good. Glad to know all the audio sounds good to you. Hey, Chris. Good to see you in tonight as well. Jeff. Thanks for jumping in the chat. Always appreciate those bits that you give me on Sundays. Drives the players nuts. Cameron is convinced that you have it out for her. Yeah, it's going to be fun, Zach. We're looking forward to talking psionics, and I have a couple admissions to make on the topic tonight. That'll be fun. All right, it is 5:30. Okay. You are going to be seen and heard in 3, 2, and 1.
Oh, hell. Oh.
And welcome, everyone. Oh, hold on. Rob's camera is off. Let me fix that. How did that happen?
I have no idea.
It's not your fault, definitely. It's because this is the same setting I've used for the 3 view. Hopefully that doesn't mean the 4 view is off when Vivi joins us. Thanks for being patient, everyone. Just a second. We must see Rob in all his glory. All right. And welcome to Lore Masters Arcanum 117th episode. Every time I say the number now, it's just difficult to believe that we've done that many and it's been going this long.
I'm 100 was last week.
I know, doesn't it? It's going super quick. I know that everyone in the chat right now is going, wait, where's Vivi? That's the only reason we're even here. Vivi will be joining us. She actually has a family thing she's doing. She'll be on in just a few minutes. And when she does, we'll switch over to the other view, so that'll just like be instant, and we'll have her in, and she'll join us in progress. Tonight, our topic is psionics, but specifically psionics in the world of Dark Sun. I am joined by hey, thank you, Mitch. We appreciate that. I am joined by a very well-known member of the community, someone that has been gaming for a long, long time. We're going to get a little bit of his background. Also has been dungeon mastering in the world of Dark Sun. You can often find him on Lawful Stupid, where he's run games for 2 or 3 years now, I think, in this setting. Mark Hope. Mark, it is our pleasure to have you with us tonight, or actually, I should say this morning. Mark is in, is it Dubai? Is that...
Abu Dhabi. Yes.
Abu Dhabi, close enough. He's in he's in Abu Dhabi, and it is 2:30 in the morning there. So we'll get him off at 4 o'clock in the morning or so. And Mark, thank you so much for being with us.
No, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's great to be here. It is never too early in the morning for Dark Sun. Before the sun, ready to roll.
I love it.
2:30 in the morning is just like prime gaming hours. What are we talking about?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Well, and of course, we joked the first time I talked to Mark. Close enough. Don't ask John geography questions. That's right, Dark Elf. You know, you get out. You get up every day. You look out your window, and you're living in Dark Sun. So it's very odd to be playing a game and living in a desert.
I can't get any of my players here to even look at Dark Sun. This is where we live. So, okay.
That's funny. Mark, as you know, we're kicking off a campaign here, a third book. Everything that we're running is in the world of Greyhawk. And in Greyhawk, I ran book 1 and book 2. Greyhawk, the book 1 was centered around the areas of Verbabonk, did range up into the free city of Greyhawk, and there was some other, but that was sort of the central geography of the first part of the campaign. That lasted for about a year and a half. The second book was based on the opposite side of the continent, began in Relastra, which is a city on the eastern coast, and ranged up, getting close, into the Raker Mountains, close to some of the barbarian tribe lands and whatnot up to the north, and that was the setting for book 2. Book 3 is taking place in the Sea of Dust. And are you familiar with the lore of Greyhawk, the Twin Cataclysms?
Absolutely, yeah. It was the first campaign setting I bought way back in the day. So, yeah.
Of course it was.
Greyhawk fan.
I knew I liked you.
That was all there was. I mean, there was nothing else. So.
That's right. That's right. And so in Dark Sun, after the Twin Cataclysms, of course, the Suel were wiped out by the Rain of Colorless Fire, the counterattack made by the Baklunish. And in the Sea of Dust, that was where the ancient Suel Empire was. Well, if you look at it, it's almost... It's perfect to just take the setting of Athos and drop it in. And you already had things like Thri-Kreen. The Thri-Kreen were part of Orth before they were ever in Dark Sun. And you even had psionic capabilities that were prevalent among certain Suel. So there is so much about the setting that just lends itself naturally. So I don't want to get too much into that tonight, but we are playing Dark Sun, but it's not in your it doesn't have the history of the Dark Sun, where, for example, you had the blue planet, halflings that ruled at one time. Right. The lore here is that this is the ancient Suel Empire wiped out by the Twin Cataclysms, and in the ashes of that, the ancient Suel mages that saw this coming, they are now the sorcerer kings in the Dark Sun setting. So it kind of fuses the lore of Greyhawk and the lore of Dark Sun, but everything else will essentially, it's Tyr, it's Nibelheim, it's Balik, it's all the same cities, it's all the same lore, the Veiled Alliance. So it's essentially that setting in the world of the Flyness.
Excellent.
So I just thought to give you that background. But so. I guess let's start off tonight and just tell us a little bit about you, how you got into D&D, how much you've played, and then maybe eventually get around to Dark Sun and Lawful Stupid.
So I started D&D, I guess 82 or 83. I ran into it through, I guess, just cultural osmosis, ads in Star Wars comics and on the backs of SF magazines. And of course, it was in the movie E.T. And I got introduced to it through a couple of friends at school. And picked it up on a holiday in the UK, and then just never looked back. I got a homebrew setting, which I started. Actually, it was 40 years ago this month, and I guess it was Easter, and I've been running that ever since. And then after 10 years of gaming, Dark Sun came out in '91. Picked that up on the week that it came out, and was just blown away by that setting, the richness. The whole aesthetic, the swords and planets, sword and sandals kind of thing, just really captured me. And run a bunch of Dark Sun campaigns on and off, short ones for the most part over the years. But then, a few years back, like 2018, I think it must have been, me and a friend of mine, Jade, over at Lawful Stupid, who decided let's start a streaming channel. And we just kind of kicked off with a few games of my homebrew setting there. And after a while, we thought, you know what, let's get some Dark Sun going. Because, as I said, all the campaigns had been fairly short. And I thought, well, we've got a bit of an audience. Let's see if we can go the full distance. So, we just wrapped just a few months back our first full campaign, which took us from starting levels up to about level 18, 40 episodes, the whole first run of initial adventures from a little knowledge through to Dragon's Crown. And that was just a dream come true, actually getting to see high-level Dark Sun characters out there and in action.
How long did each of those sessions average, those 40 sessions?
So the short ones were like around 3 hours. And then every now and then we'd have to go out to about 4, but they all kind of averaged around that. And then there's a couple of them, like kind of mid-season finales, that kind of thing, were like 5 and 6 hours. But it averages around the 4-hour mark.
Gotcha. Interesting, because that's a lot of levels, 18 levels in 40 sessions. So
I was pushing that, and if you go by the book AD&D 2nd edition, level advancement is slow. So instead, what I did was I looked at each adventure, and if it says this adventure is for levels 5 to 7, and the next one is for levels 7 to 9, I thought, well, I'm going to make sure the characters level up 3 times over the course of this adventure, so they're ready for the next one. So the advancement rate was a little faster than by the book. But it let us get through all the adventures that we wanted to play and into some levels that you don't actually get to play very often.
That's very cool. So you've really run the gamut of all the published adventures in the setting.
About half of them, where we've just started prepping for season 2 this week, and we're going to run the second half of the main kind of published adventures then, and a little bit more customized to the characters, because we were a little bit kind of being pulled by the nose through the narrative in season 1, so easing off on the gas on that a little bit for season 2 and letting the actual characters' own motivations come to the fore a bit more, as opposed to being like, well, the adventure says you're going to Nibane, so go to Nibane.
Right, yeah. Yes.
Bit more freedom this time around. So.
Yeah, that's that kind of mechanism can be used in very, very sparing doses, but it's generally not how people want to play their games long term. So that should be a lot of fun. When does season 2 kick off?
We don't know yet. I've been saying to the players June or July, but we're not being held to that. When we're ready. Initially, we said after the summer, but we couldn't wait, and. So we started character generation and putting the backgrounds together and the opening adventures. But I'm just giving myself a nice long lead in to make sure all the assets are there and we've got all our technical side covered. And so, another couple of months, I think.
Okay. It's not one of our topics tonight, but I was commenting on this last night, Rob, in the session 0. When I decided I wanted to do this, I hadn't thought through all of the logistical elements because I don't play a pure theater of mind game. And I use theater of mind a lot, but I also use music, I use visuals, I use miniatures and terrain. And it's easy to take for granted how much of what's out there is based on, typical medieval Europe, feudal Europe tropes, and they don't fit this setting.
Yeah, no, that for sure. I was like, yeah. As soon as you said I knew where you're going with that, I was like, yeah, sand. That could also get messy.
yeah. So like it's led to Mark. We got 3D printed minis and painting being done by one of our admins. He's got like over 150 different models that he's printed and painted, because all the you don't get to pull out your ogres anymore, and you don't, and you've got all the monsters are so different and unique. But then even things like music, you can't walk into a Dark Sun tavern and have Celtic music playing in the background. It ruins the mood. How did you handle that with your streaming? Did you use any of those sorts of mechanisms, or was it pure theater of mind?
So we use a combination of theater of mind and Roll20's battle map interface. So that's just a top-down, flat 2D map
right.
with homemade counters, and then virtual dice. As far as music goes, we're using like homemade playlists, but exactly they're coming from games like The Age of Conan, Conan Exiles, music from Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey, from the Dune movies, 10,000 BC, anything that has that right kind of feel and ethos. Prince of Persia a little bit. And basically it's been a task of figuring out which ones don't get us red copyright strikes on Twitch and YouTube that we can get away with using, and other ones we can. And we're kind of skirting the line a little bit there, but like you say, it really lends to the atmosphere. If you can find just the right theme.
Absolutely. I'm big on sounds. I think, they're so critical to ambience, and they have a huge psychological effect on us. If you would, send me your whitelist of what, worked, because I don't have any DMCA strikes and I don't want any, but yeah, I'm getting so there's a lot of custom music that I'm having developed. One of my sponsors creates music, but with this likely to go on for at least probably 50 to 75 sessions, if not more, you're gonna always need music. So
yeah. we have some custom stuff made, and there is a certain degree of royalty-free music that you can tap.
Yes.
But most of it does fall into that, as you said, that kind of Eurocentric medieval atmosphere.
Yeah.
Which is of limited use, really.
Absolutely. All right. So thank you for that sort of background on you. And we definitely want to keep track when you guys launch your game. And I doubt we'll ever be able to raid into each other, because most likely the time zones are not going to overlap our games.
We've raided into you guys at the end of a couple of ours.
I remember. Yeah, I remember. Now, was that your game that was raiding into us?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, then I stand corrected.
So we'll see if that works again. Then you'll see us again.
Yeah, and Jade
under the same.
Yeah, and Jade's a good guy, and your crew's good. We had June Solar in our chat last night. He's is he an admin on the Dark Sun Discord, or who? I know I've seen him.
I think so. He's super active in the community.
Yeah,
he's been running Athas.con and producing all sorts of amazing material. Donated to our channel to have a NPC in our game. Great person, real supportive member of the community.
Yeah, very cool. I was glad to see him in last night. I think he joined our Discord, Rob.
Joined either this morning or yesterday. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Sure.
Nice.
Okay, well, let's dive into Psionics. John may need some custom somber Dark Sun music for when the characters die from thirst or get eaten by a dragon king. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or the Thri-Kreen gets hungry.
Yeah.
Bring a Demon's character.
They're always hungry.
Yes. Well, I want to ask you more about your Dark Sun campaigns in general, and I can tell already that the next time you have holiday there in Abu Dhabi, I'm going to try to get you on again, because I want to ask you 1,000 questions, and we don't have time for all of them tonight. But let's start with psionics in the setting, and you and I talked about this a little bit. It's interesting to see how players who have never played psionics before, I believe you indicated your first party had no psionic characters in the initial run until they encountered psionic enemies, and that changed?
Yeah, because then all of a sudden people can come around and ream your brain for you, and you think, oh, maybe we need someone who can do that back in return. Yeah. I mean, most characters will have a wild talent in Dark Sun, a kind of randomly generated psionic power that traditionally can be just a basic low-level kind of thing, or by the whim of the dice can turn out to be something really quite powerful. And I use a tweaked psionic system. I sort of rewrote it, but I've tried to keep that element intact so that you can have, like, one of our players got what was the equivalent of a 6th level power the other day during their character creation, while others have got, detect spirits and hear noise through someone else's ears and other such low-level things, while other people might be teleporting around or disintegrating. So everyone's going to have some degree of psionics, and that can give you a base level of defense against attacks that come your way. But actual fully fledged psionicists, they turned out initially to be rare. But we've got a couple of them in the new party. They've learned the hard way that you don't want to leave your brain undefended.
Yeah, I'd say that's good advice. So let's start with, I think, one of the most obvious questions, and that is, how do you differentiate and keep psionics feeling unique from traditional arcane magics in the setting?
Okay, well, with the system that my hack system actually dilutes that a little bit, but by the book, one of their primary differences is they're not broken down into levels in the same way that spells are. Although the version that I use does that, because I just like that. But a lot of it, I think, has to do with the style of powers that come out. You don't generally get things like lightning bolts and fireballs and what have you. They have a slightly more, I suppose, science fiction sheen to them. I mean, if anyone's read Julian May's Many Colored Land series, you can see one of the primary influences for psionics there. These groups of disciplines with each having very distinctive characteristics: psychokinesis, telepathy, metacreativity, and so on. So partially it's the mechanics, although there is obviously a fair degree of overlap, because there's certain things that you want to be able to do in a Dungeons and Dragons game: teleporting and zapping and concealing and changing. But I think the main way you bring across the differences is in the way you describe it. So in Dark Sun, wizard magic draws upon the land,
Right.
and you'll describe the energy of the land being gathered by the spellcaster, or defiled in the case of a defiler.
Right.
With the clerics, it's coming through the elements or from the powers of the cosmos for them druids. But psionics, you really need to lean into the psychic element of it. And a good way to do that is also using mindscapes. So the telepathic combat isn't just, two people glaring at each other and frowning an awful lot. You can describe mental constructs battling it out in imaginary spaces, or you can have flashes of psychic power or ectoplasmic forms taking place. A lot of it comes through the description, I think.
So let's. I was going to save that for later, but since you've touched on it, let's jump into mindscapes. And as we're looking at this, I want to respond to the chat. John Demongund mentioned, and Rob was confirming that playing a psionicist is daunting, as it requires learning a whole new system. One of the confessions I wanted to make is, because none of my players selected psionics, with all the things I've been doing to prep for book 3, I have put the learning the psionic system and prepping for that kind of at the end of the process here, which is part of the reason I have you on tonight. I'll be cramming in the next 2 weeks to make sure that I am boned up and ready to go with my psionics by May 2nd. So really right now I'm operating on my knowledge from 35 years ago and sort of common sense exposure. I did just recently read The Verdant Passage, the first book in the Prism Pentad, and
Right. Yes.
refamiliarizing there. But is that kind of where mindscapes go? So you have the initial part where Aegis, I believe, is talking with Kalak, and he sees this vast pyramid with the dark spheres rolling down, or attacks on the mind are depicted as winged birds. And is that sort of the concept behind the mindscape?
Exactly that, yeah. And there's a few different mechanical manifestations of it in various Dark Sun products, but basically it's that, yeah. The idea is that the psionicists tap into some shared mental space where their psionic powers manifest in different visionary forms. So, and there's a great picture that illustrates this in one. I think it's in the revised campaign setting, of two little psionic guys like frowning away like this, and then one of them has an ectoplasmic shield in front of him, and the other one has an ectoplasmic mechalot that's slamming into it while he's trying to breach the other guy's defense. So yeah, it really is representative of whatever the form is.
So go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say, you can get really quite crunchy with this and have different forms given real mechanical weight, or you can just kind of abstract it and leave it to the players' imaginations to come up with basically cool images to use.
Yeah, so let's dive into that for a second. So I'm showing here. I don't know if you can see it. If you have the Twitch stream up, you can also see the chat.
I do.
Hello, Osiris 5K. The second book, The Crimson Legion, does a nice job of representing the psychic mindscape damage. Okay, well, I'm going to read that also before. What's that? Oh, is that one?
Hi to Osiris.
Oh, that's one of your people. Hey, thanks for joining us, Osiris. I'm going to read that book also before May 2nd. I've got a lot of studying to keep doing. I mean, it's not like I've been slacking. I've been doing a lot already, but it is a whole different thing that we're doing here. But so the Mindscape, it says here, the attacker rolls D20, their proficiency or attack bonus, and if you're using 3rd edition. Were you playing 3.5 or Pathfinder 1E as well? Is that what I recall?
I have done a Pathfinder version of Dark Sun, yeah, but I don't recall there being much psionics in that beyond wild talents, actually. I think people, they were just afraid of it because it's such a new system, and people, as you've said yourself, no, I don't want to learn that, so they default to other classes.
So sorry, go ahead, Rob.
I was going to say psionics has kind of been like the, the proverbial redhead
That's right.
stepchild of D&D. I mean, it showed up in 1st edition in appendix. And then in second, like 3 pages or 4 pages of combat rules in DMG, And then in second edition, it didn't show up until whenever the Complete Psionicist Handbook came out. I think like 5 months before Dark Sun did, because Dark Sun I think was like October of '91. I believe.
Let's see if we have a date on it. So here's the Complete Psionics Handbook. That's the
third edition.
That's third edition. Yep. You're right.
Yeah, but no, the Complete Psionics Handbook. I mean, it didn't even exist in the game. They released it as an optional, completely optional book, and made it instead of bolted on thing that honestly I thought that was kind of like wasted space in the first edition one. The second one they did a better job with it, but again you wonder, they still didn't know what to do with it considering they made it an optional book that didn't come out till later.
Yeah, no, agreed. And so what are you going to be playing in your new season with, Mark? What system?
So it's going to be my hacked version of AD&D Second Edition.
Okay, so modified AD&D 2E. Okay, so back to this one. We're saying if you're using third or fourth edition, it'd be your attack bonus. It'd be proficiency if it's in 2E, plus their manifesting ability modifier. The Mindscape defense, the target rolls a d20 and their proficiency or saving throw defense bonus if they have psionic powers not counting wild talents, plus their ability modifier. If you're using third edition, saving throw, or if you're using fourth edition, defense. And then you have this contest between the higher roll with the modifiers wins. Ties still go to the defender. The contestant who wins narrates how the attack succeeded or failed and could include a change in forms to better illustrate the result. Is this more or less how you were running it?
Yeah, basically. I mean, the original version from so the original second edition version had 5 psionic attacks and 5 psionic defenses, and they worked in a kind of rock paper scissors format. So each had a certain effect, but depending on the defense that was used versus the attack that was used, some would be more effective than others. And I haven't carried that over into my own system, and I kind of regret not being a good enough designer to find a way to make that work, because it's such a cool idea. But we lean more into the revised Psionics thing, where you have a mental armor class and a mental attack roll, and then the powers have various effects depending on what level the power is at.
And so if I want to make sure I'm catching that first thing that you mentioned. So you're saying this sort of 2E version with the 5 sets and the rock, paper, scissors. So there was sort of an element, if I'm understanding, of a gamification inside, which of these things that you were choosing. Was it in some sort of blind fashion, like the old...
Yeah, it recommended you would write them on cards, and one player would put down, well, I'm going to use Mind Thrust, and you'd put his card on the table, and the other player might have Thought Shield on his card, and then you'd flip them up and reveal who was using what power, and then the DM would see, this one gives you a +5, or this one gives you a -5.
That's interesting.
It's really interesting.
Go ahead, Rob.
I actually have that page pulled up, like Mind Thrust versus Mind Thrust.
Go ahead and Discord that to me, Rob, and I'll bring it up for everybody.
All right. Of course, it's not all on the same exact page, so let me see if I can make this in.
If it's too much hassle, don't worry about it. I just thought we could show it.
Yeah, because it like starts at the bottom of the page, the first line, and then the rest is on the next page.
No worries.
But there's it gives the different, say Mind Thrust. There's like 5 different defenses: Mind Blank, Thought Shield, Mental Barrier, Intellect Fortress, and Tower of Iron Will. And it's got 5 different modifiers depending on which of the defenses you're going against.
I like that. I do like sort of the tactical kinetic. What just happened to? There we go. That was weird. My screen went blank for a second. The tactical kinetic piece of the cards and it reminds me of the old jousting rules in Chainmail that we've played in Jay's Tilts, and because each person is dictating where which form of attack and which form of defense and which way they're leaning in a blind fashion, and then that helps resolve the outcome. That's a fun gamification.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be too hard, I think, to port it into the system that you're using, just by deciding what gives you a bonus and what gives a penalty under the rules that you're using. And especially if you're playing around a table, you can make your little cards and incorporate those, and that might be kind of fun.
Okay. So if you can take a look at this, I'm going to pull up this next slide on the Mindscape. So variant attack and defense modes. Is this sort of what you're referring to, where you have Mind Blank, Thought Shield, Mental Barrier, Intellect Fortress, Tower of Iron Will, and then the attack?
Exactly it. Yeah.
And so you've got this grid here. All right, so this is the very system. Okay.
Yeah. And that looks like that's been tweaked for 5th edition there. So.
Yep, exactly. All right, very interesting. And then so when it came to the descriptions of what's happening in the Mindscape, were you relying on sort of suggested descriptions, or was it really just up to the imagination of the player and the DM in any fashion you wanted to create the visuals for the Mindscape?
We just eventually ended up with just making it up to suit ourselves. There's an article in Dragon Magazine, I think it referenced it there just on the page it was showing, and in, I want to say, The Will and the Way, there are other suggestions there as well, harbingers and constructs. So there are things you can lean into and things you can draw on if you want to hew close to published material, but we ended up just making it up.
Interesting. And I think that would be fun for the players as well, and it seems like in particular with the Mindscape, it looks like the victor is getting to make a lot of the selection on what actually happens and what it looks like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if a player can customize their own style, and it allows them to express a little bit of their own creativity. If they decide that all their attacks are going to come in the form of, I don't know, scorpions, and all their defenses are going to be large steel walls, that allows them to lean into that and gives people a recognizable style. And your NPCs can then, of course, have their own particular resonance that they give off, and you'll know that, it's a mental attack of slithering snakes. That has to be our old enemy, Templar Darnevudine, or something along those lines. So you can use it as a character building tool as well.
Okay, I like that. I've got a couple questions I want to follow up here, but I want to make sure that the chat has an opportunity as well. So if you have any questions for our guest, just type those in the chat, and we'll be happy to ask Mark. He's got a wealth of experience here, and we've had many more folks that jumped on since we got started. It is currently 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning where he is at. And so he's in Abu Dhabi and being very generous with his time tonight. So if he does start drooling and just drop over at some point, you understand why. It's not that Rob is that boring. It's that he's just very, very tired. Sorry, Rob, I haven't taken a shot in so long. I had to get one out, Rob.
Go ahead. There we go.
All right, we are being joined by Vivi. So let me pop this over here, and it'll be a brief there, and then as soon as she's in there, look at that. It's almost like we know what we're doing here at Blue Box. Welcome, Vivi. Hola.
Reinforcements on the way.
Yes.
I'm coming.
Yeah, we knew we weren't getting it done, so we brought Vivian. Vivi, tonight you are joined by Mark Hope. Mark, this is Vivi Roberts.
Hello.
Hey, Vivi, nice to meet you. Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So I've already given Mark a little background on you, Vivi, and he knows that you have suffered through my DMing for 3 years and just absolutely had to have a break.
I did.
Her last
It was
character.
awful. Just kidding. Just joking. Totally kidding.
Her last character did die a horrible death. But that happens. Mark has been playing for over 40 years. He's actually joining us from Abu Dhabi right now. It's 3 o'clock in the morning his time. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And.
But do you have coffee or some sort of caffeinated beverage?
I have this refreshing Coca-Cola beverage here.
Good for you.
And he's been playing Dark Sun for years. He played, when it came out in the 90s. He has streamed it on Twitch for a couple of years with Lawful Stupid. And we're talking about Psionics today. So thanks for joining us, Vivi. And just jump in anywhere you would like with questions.
Yep. Just keep talking and I'll roll on in.
I know you will. All right. So we do have a question from chat. Which said, so I know that with Dark Sun, the way Dark Sun magic ravages life and land, psionics largely takes place in the mind. It takes the place of magic, but I don't really know the lore reason that psionics are so prevalent here. Well, that would be very different in my version of Dark Sun because it's based in Greyhawk in the Flyness. I can answer that question from this perspective, but talk to us, Mark. What is there in terms of lore in the original Athasian setting for the reason for the prevalence of psionics?
So in the original box set, there's nothing. It just says that everyone has it, and it's assumed as a part of the world. But as the game line progresses, they do start to come up with some really interesting ideas. We're actually going to get into these in Season 2, so if any of my players are watching, go away. You can come back in a couple of minutes. The in-lore, or the in-game setting reason why Dark Sun has such a large amount of psionics actually is linked into the war between the Githyanki and the Githzerai, which has a Gith... Okay, that's the right way around. Has a Githyanki colony on Athas that gets attacked by Githzerai, I want to say. I might be getting this the wrong way around. And they detonate a psychic bomb, basically a sonic WMD, that fries the minds of their enemies. And in so doing, kickstarts psionic evolution amongst the rest of the people on the planet. And also nukes the brains of the Githyanki back to a kind of much more degenerated state, giving rise to the race of the Gith, who are a part of the Dark Sun setting. These kind of desert raider types.
Very cool.
Yeah, a really kind of weird, specific background setting there. But it's other than that, it's not really referenced in any of the main products. There's not many deep reasons given for it, but canonically, that's what's going on.
Gotcha. And Twy, I'll go ahead and I'll cover that in another session. I don't want to take too much of Mark's time tonight talking about the modifications that I've made. I'll do that in other settings. But we did have Sam Curtis telling us that the original psionics tables were actually ripped out of his book. I thought initially he'd ripped them out because he was frustrated, but apparently they were cut out.
So did I. I mean, I was like, I don't blame you, because, I mean, first edition psionics was just absurd. It's like the just for somebody to have psionic powers required you didn't have a psionicist class. There was no class. It could be anybody. They had to have either intelligence, wisdom, or charisma above a 16. They had to roll a percentile die. The base chance of them having psionics with nothing else taken into account was 100. They had to roll a 0-0 on their die to just even have it in the first place. Every point above 16 for each of those scores gave an additional point to a point and a half to their chance. So you could potentially get it as low as I think a 95 chance. Of course, that would probably mean you had an 18 intelligence, wisdom, and charisma.
Right.
At what point your DM is going to rip up your character sheet.
Right.
We all knew that was a lie.
And yet so many characters seem to have it.
Remarkable.
Yeah. And that,
don't look at Fraley's original character sheets. If you look at Fraley's original character sheets, yeah, they're right, Patrick.
Here's my favorite part of it, though. After you've gone through the pain of getting psionic abilities, and somehow managing to get that die roll, you rolled to find out what your psionic ability score was, what your thing was, and it was like a D100 roll plus some modifier based on, again, how many of those stats were above certain levels. And if you happen to be a psionicist whose attack score or psionic strength was below 100, you could not attack anyone or anything that didn't have psionics. So your if you were not a powerful enough psionicist, your psionics might do is make you vulnerable to other creatures that could attack you because they had psionic abilities.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what they were thinking. They tried to do a better, they did a much more detailed job in the Psionicist Handbook. I think we used it somebody in one campaign, and it just got, one campaign for a while, and they didn't like the class. I didn't like having to deal with the class, and we kind of scrapped that, and that was the end of that for psionics.
Yeah. So in this setting, we'll be using a modified psionic system that will not have that level of imbalance. The question was asked here, are the players going to have wild talents? I am going to have a very low percentage chance. Psionics will not be as prevalent in my setting of Dark Sun in the Flyness as they are out of the box set for Dark Sun. It's not going to be that everyone has psionics, or that even most everyone has psionics. It is going to be that psionics is prevalent. There's lots of it, but it's still not that everyone has it. I just don't want to run a system that way, and I think we can keep it fairly well balanced. So the players will have a chance for a wild talent. The most likely is none of them will have one, with the exception of the Thri-kreen. The Thri-kreen will have some sort of psionic, low-level psionic ability at the minimum, because it is really sort of systemic to that species. So, Mark, what would be some common misconceptions or misunderstandings about the use of psionics in Dark Sun?
I think the main one is that it's just a replacement for magic. You hear that a lot. And I think it's incumbent upon the DM and the players, mainly the DM, to make sure that it comes across as something different. Magic is feared, arcane magic at least, whereas psionics is accepted as a part of life, as a part of the world. The main difference, of course, is it doesn't have any effect on the landscape around it. So it's important, I think, to bring it across as something other than just, magic wearing different pants. One of the main misconceptions is that it's incredibly complicated. Once you get your head around the systems, the base system under AD&D 2nd edition, it's just a proficiency check with modifiers depending on how difficult the power is. So it's a system that already exists within the game, and that gets later revised into it being an attack roll. And then, of course, later editions take their own approaches on that. But those are the two ones that you hear the most, which I think you can ameliorate those to a degree. It's a new system that you have to learn, sure, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a new mass of complicated crunch. The main one, though, is how you bring it across in the setting to give it its own feel.
Yeah, I like that. Vivi, the chat obviously always welcomes you. Manda made a note, and it is absolutely true. Those of you who've watched Vivi on my stream for 3 years know she has never looked better. You have gone 10 years younger since you changed jobs. It is so. You're sleeping. So she worked.
That's what it is. Yeah.
She worked a graveyard shift, Mark, and so she was off. Yeah, she would come in like oftentimes after working 2 straight shifts and still try to play D&D, and now she looks rested. And so
it's amazing what sleep will do for you.
It is.
That's funny, huh?
Mark, in regards to psionics, you're talking about, like you say, it's similar to magic. Like, I'm not very familiar with psionics at all. So would it be similar to magic where a good example would be like burning hands with Rory in that one episode where you actually used it to burn hands? Like, are you able to play around with it a little bit more and kind of get creative with the psionics like you kind of do with magic, or is that something that's more by the book, like whatever?
I think that's going to ultimately be in the hands of the DM. At least in 2nd edition, the powers are fairly codified, the same as spells, but there is a certain amount of wiggle room in the descriptions. So I think you could, but also some of them are quite broad. So rather than there being a burning hands ability, you've got the ability to agitate the molecules within your target. So you can use that, for example, to melt locks.
Cell disruption.
Right, exactly.
Super cool.
Yeah. And the healing power is called cell adjustment. So it has this sort of pseudo-scientific aspect to it. There's another one called biofeedback, which has to do with like thickening the tissues of your body in order to give yourself a higher armor class. But the description has a kind of broad description and then says mechanically it does this. But I think a generous DM would be able to maybe it softens the impact of a blow, or means that you don't feel pain so much. Or
I'm sorry, what kind of DM? We don't have those around here. No, good question. I like that question, Vivian. I would say yes. So, to further, Mark, I think the best way to sort of get the sense of what this is about, this question, would be the old trope of, I cast grease and then hit it with fireball. Just using spell casting creatively, not necessarily doing something against the description of the spell, but actually, putting some thought and some logic to the application of it in a creative fashion, which I think is really, it's up to the DM and it's up to the player. If the player can create a sensible narrative that fits in the context of the spell but has a creative element, a DM is going to be much more likely to be receptive to that and let it work in a game system, which I certainly would.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same kind of approach, I think. I mean, you can be all, legalistic and rules lawyery and just say no, but games are better when you say yes and see what comes next, I think.
Yeah. Agreed. Good question. John wants the players to win, but he wants the challenges to be real, not... Boom. I could not have said it any better, Twilight. That's like, this whole idea of the challenge in the games, it's only because I want the victory to be sweeter. I don't enjoy anything that is easy and comes easily. I prefer it, to be a challenge. And so when you have that, I think that creates the sense of, accomplishment for the players. So really, ultimately, even the pain is about bringing pleasure to the players.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what is your favorite or some of your favorite abilities or powers or maybe even stories that you've seen where it has been applied in one of your campaign settings that it was memorable?
So Jade has a character in the previous arc who had this wild talent which allowed you to teleport someone else. And he rolled quite well to get it. But because his character is an psionicist, he could almost never get it to work. And over again, he's trying to teleport people around the battlefield and failing. And then the times that it did come through, it was just perfect. Like Rikus was being swallowed by a monster at one point, I believe, and he finally managed to get this thing to work, to pull him out of the jaws of this creature and teleport him onto the deck of a ship. There was another scene where there's a magic giant psionic gem where the enemy has got his hand against it and is using it to power all sorts of horrible psionic abilities. And of course, their main problem is getting him away from this thing. And it came down to just putting a wall of force between the guy's hand and the gem so he can no longer access it. So you get this combination of really weird, esoteric ideas and abilities combined with real kind of basic spellcasting and ability use that can make for these really interesting outcomes in play. We've had other ones where, mundane things like using a low-level power to cause a daydream in someone, to slip by guards. There's a scene in pretty late into the campaign where the party's psionicist finally comes in and she's got herself turned invisible. She's hiding in shadows. She's depleting enemies' psionic power points without them realizing it and reading their minds. And is kind of wandering around the dungeon with the rest of the characters, but no one knows she's there. And she's playing the role of like the guy in the chair with all the screens information to the heroes. But she's walking around with them, but she's like, no, go here and ask this guy this and talk to that person about that and go through there. It's just really, really cool to see. Yeah.
I love that.
She had to wait a long time to be able to do that. So it was worth it in the end.
Talk about. Well, I've got a million questions. Let me pause for a second. Robert, Vivi, any questions you guys want to jump in with and ask?
Not the moment.
Okay. All right. So talk about with that some of the monsters that are psionic in the setting. You've got one of the first ones you see in the Verdant Passage is the Gaj, which and by the way, is it? I've always pronounced it Rikus. Is it Rikus? Am I pronouncing it wrong?
I got called out on YouTube for this. Rikus and I say Rikus. I say Thrikreen. I say Uric.
No, it's Rikus. It's Thrikreen. It's
see, you see?
Yeah.
Listen, route. Come on.
Yeah,
what are we doing here?
We're arguing over the pronunciation of mythical fantasy creatures. So yeah. So you have the Gaj.
These bad habits. Gaj. Yeah, Gaj.
Gaj. Yeah, whatever. He pops up out of the sand, surprises Rikus, has the antenna, hits him with psionics, then communicates with him. Or you have the Cylops, early on, which they're these tracking centipedes that have the ability also to use sound. How have you portrayed monsters like that or others using psionic powers in your campaigns?
So my favorite ones are the plants. The psionic plants, because it's the last thing that you expect is like a bush is going to telepathically attack you.
You don't know what you're doing right now with people like Manda and Ashlyn. Like they're gonna go sick over this.
it's fantastic, right? So there's a creature called a hunting cactus, and it's in the second Dark Sun Monstrous Compendium. And it's basically a little cactus with various psionic powers, and it can shoot paralyzing spines at you, and then it kind of inches over to your body and extends like a feeding tube, and drains your fluids while you're lying there paralyzed. But there's a little line in it which says that these creatures are not native to Athas. So it's like an alien psychic cactus that's come to the Dark Sun world from who knows where, no idea. And these things now have proliferated across the world. And it mentions that they don't really see humans and animals as real distinct life forms. So they kind of see us the same way that some people see plants. People don't always register plants as being fully sentient kind of beings. Well, these hunting cactus see humans in the same way. And back in the days of 3rd edition, when we were starting, doing Athas.org stuff, and the old Dark Sun forums are real active, we came up with this criminal mastermind hunting cactus who'd established this huge criminal network, of course, across Athas called Lord Doomspike. And it just kind of grew to become this ridiculous community NPC with increasingly absurd powers. And
a sentient cactus, I'll call it from another plane, called Lord Doomspike. Is that right?
Yeah. He's a criminal mastermind, like a mafia band.
They're the prickly.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Well, no, so I was joking about Manda. Psychic plants, exactly. So two of my players they're intertwining their characters, and they're both really into plant lore. The recently released, I've got copies of it sitting upstairs. Amanda will put it in the chat. Herbalist Primer. And I actually I got a copy for you guys. I got 2 copies. One will be used for a giveaway here soon. Got the flash cards, so you got the Herbalist Primer, and their character
amazing resource.
It is. It's so cool. And their character backstories were heavily influenced by the plant life of Athas. One by blood vine, and the other by the stitch vine, or suture vine, as I'm liking to call it. It's really cool to see the people immediately go to the monsters thinking of the fauna, but the flora is pretty sick in Athas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our first adventure has the characters being attacked by a psionic cactus, like right in the first session. So it kind of sets the tone quite nicely. Yeah. And there's lots of carnivorous plants all throughout D&D, but having carnivorous psionic plants. There's one, I can't remember its name, but it releases spores into the atmosphere that psionically attack you and enchant you and cause you to come in up close to the plant and just kind of lie down so it can feed on you. It's just a whole variety of crazy stuff like that.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
For you, not the player.
Brain seed. Brain seed, I want to say. Yeah.
Brain seed. Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Sounds like a trip to the Australian outback. Everything just wants to kill you.
Right. Everything is an ambush predator that's just waiting for you.
Yes.
Now I feel bad for all the plants I've murdered, because if that happens, then I'm the first to be attacked.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This will be served.
Yeah, they're storing up memories. The karma's coming, Vivi.
I know.
Actually, I think what's happening right now is Vivi is really, really glad that she's missing at least the first part of book 3.
I know what to look out for.
Right.
Everything and anything.
She can watch the body count and then decide.
Coming at a higher level,
Yes, yeah. It's a little bit safer.
Right.
I will just say this. I cannot imagine a body count that would be anything like book 2. Book 2 was a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, but you're throwing them in a world that is savage beyond belief, in a post-apocalyptic area with all kinds of things that can kill them body and mind and soul, and I can't imagine a body count. Nope.
Which just means that my players are coming in much more on guard than my book 2. When I told my book 2 characters Relastra is a scary place, they were all like, yeah, right, okay, let's play D&D. I think, but yet they felt a little bit differently. These players, they know what they're getting into. And look, I always believe, in general, PC deaths and especially TPKs should only be a function of both player decisions that were errant and really horrible dice rolls. And that was certainly the case on multiple occasions in book 2. Hopefully we won't see a repeat of that in book 3. So, Mark, talk to us about those homebrew rules, if you would, for just a moment more. So you have a homebrew system. What would be just some key components of how you've implemented psionics in your game? I know it's a 2E modified version, but I'm really curious as to what you tweaked in your system.
Okay, so I really like the way psionics ran under 2E, but just for my own sanity, I wanted to make it just a little easier to handle. So I took a leaf from 3rd edition, from the expanded Psionics handbook, and which breaks psionic powers down into levels like spells. And so I went through all the 2nd edition psionic powers and assigned them to levels, and then off the basis of that, modified their efficacy to suit the level. So some powers got boosted slightly, some got nerfed a little bit. And then we've play tested that over a couple of arcs, and we seem to be at a point where it's working right now. I kept a few things that are the same, so the idea is that you have to roll to activate your psionic powers, so it's not always a given thing, but I set the system so that by the time you're reaching double figures, the maths means that you're going to succeed all the time. So that gives you this idea that starting psionicists run the risk of failure, but as they get to higher levels, the powers become reliable, and that's really a balance issue, because you don't run the risk of failure as a wizard in quite the same way, and psionics needs to be, for setting reasons, just as stable, just as reliable. Otherwise, the kind of in-game suspension of belief around psionics suffers a little bit. So there was a bunch of different moving parts that I had to align there. But those were the main ones. Breaking it into levels and trying to get the maths right for the success versus failure.
Got it. Makes sense.
Is that something? Oh,
go ahead. No, please.
Is that something that you developed over time, or was that something you kind of figured out after the first few sessions, where you're like, okay, this might be a little bit not balanced, so we'll try to figure it out, or? Both,
really. I mean, I tried to do as much of it beforehand as possible, and there were a couple of short Dark Sun arcs I ran with face-to-face groups, and one short online one, so I was able to at least test out the basic chassis of the system. And then some of it was tweaked through play, but not much. By the time we were running on Lawful Stupid, I had a fairly good handle on how it was working. So yeah.
That's neat. Obviously, situations that players throw you into when you're not expecting it definitely sparks that. Oh, maybe I need to tweak that a little bit.
It's a giant pain in the neck. It is awful.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, but over time, you kind of iron out the kinks, and it seems to be working now. So
that's good. That's awesome.
So this is a good question from Zach Dark Elf Twilight. I was thinking earlier, what is the interplay between arcane magics and psionics, or even divine, or in this case, elemental magics and psionics? And the question that he's asking is, if psionics are separate from magic mechanically and narratively, do magic and psionics interact transparently? Like, does an anti-magic field block psionics? Which I know the answer to that should be no. But are there other ways in which you see the arcane and the psionics intertwining or interplaying in your games?
So first off, that's a DM decision, and they call that out specifically in the Complete Psionics Handbook and a couple of other places. There's DM, you need to make that call up front. Does it overlap? Is it the same? How different are they? Does Detect Magic work with Psionics? Does Anti-Magic work with Psionics? No. And, you can have yes or you can have it no, and I
have it no.
Come down on the same here. Yeah.
Now, mind you, there are certain magic items that should theoretically block psionic attacks. Mind Shield.
Yeah, that's kind of the good point, Rob. That's kind of the stuff I was thinking about, whether it's Mind Shield, or even if you have items which increase certain ability scores which affect psionics. Of course, those are going to have an impact on psionics. But like Mind Shield, what other sorts of spells would just make sense that they would have some impact on psionics? Or conversely, psionicists using Ego Whip to disrupt a spellcaster, and so how have you seen that play out in your game?
So ESP and things like that are obvious that they almost mimic psionic powers or vice versa. Psionics by the book doesn't have an initiative modifier. So in AD&D 2nd edition, the things that you do carry initiative modifiers. Some weapons are faster than others.
Right.
Some spells are faster than others. Psionics just goes off like that. So yeah, we have seen it used to disrupt spells. There's also in Dark Sun, when you get to very high levels, you can meld psionics and magic together and generate this stuff called psionic enchantments, which are effectively 10th level spells. And that also...
That's right.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
To metamorphosis into the dragons of the setting, or Evangians, which are like an alternate kind of advanced being, or clerics becoming elementals. And that all happens through a melding of magic and psionics at the highest kind of levels. So the idea that they work together is hard baked into the setting, but apart from incidental effects at lower levels, it doesn't come into play forcefully until you're really high up in the levels.
That makes sense. What do you think of the magic item idea of one of our chatters, Chip? The new magic item would be the tinfoil hat.
Okay, so there is a rule which says that if you have a metal helmet on, Psionics doesn't work. And yeah, so it's in the Psionics handbook, I think. So I used that, and then they just decided they weren't even going to bother with the helmets, and they started using buckets. So there's a couple of scenes in our game, and one with a really powerful NPC who comes to an unpleasant end when the characters slap a bucket over his head. And rain down all sorts of hell upon the guy. So yeah.
I don't know if I buy that. I mean, wouldn't if it's a mental attack, if you have so much as a visor, an eye slot, can I not access your mind through your eyes?
Well, there you go, and that's something you'd have to kind of decide as DM.
Yeah.
As much as I'm given to making it a challenging setting and grim and gritty, the whimsical side of me struggles to resist the image of a bucket over someone's head.
The bucket has no eye slots. I'm down with that. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The secret Dark Sun weapon is a
over
bucket.
your eyes. It just can still sit on your head like this, can it?
We had another scene where characters were imprisoned, and they had these metal bands bolted to their heads while they were in prison as a way of preventing silence. So the idea being that it kind of just the metal around your head disrupts the psionic field. That appears to be the in-setting explanation for that. Whether you like that or not, I don't know. I like the idea that there is, like with a wizard, you gag them, or you tie their hands, or you take away the material components. With a psionicist, there's not much you can do other than this weird interaction of metal and the brain field, I guess.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, in Complete Psionics Handbook for 2nd edition, it says a psionicist can use his powers while wearing a helmet that is psionically active, so it has to have, or featuring magical enchantments that affect or simulate psionic powers. If the psionicist is wearing a normal helmet of any sort, he cannot use his powers.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even say anything about the target, so it kind of, working from that kind of assumes that if the target is wearing a helmet, same deal. They can't be attacked. If you can't attack with a helmet on, someone wearing a helmet wouldn't be attackable.
Yeah, and I don't think, to me, all house rule this for the team, but I like the whimsical side as well. And yeah, certainly, Vivi, you could prop the bucket on your head up here. I think the point being made, I think if you have a complete metallic covering, I didn't know Dark Elf was going to actually kick off a legitimate or Chip was going to kick off a legitimate conversation with the tinfoil hat. But if you literally cover so there no eye visible, head is covered metallically, I'll say yes. But if you've got so much as a visor, I don't see how anything that is transmitting from this cannot come this direction and also hit this direction. I just don't think that, but I do like the whimsical bucket on the head.
Yeah, well, the eyes are the window to the soul.
That's exactly right.
You can strike them with the power of your mind through the eye.
Yeah, I definitely think so. So, okay, so a couple great points in the question here. Wearing helmets in the desert is problematic. Even getting access to metal in Athos is problematic. It's extremely rare. So are there sentient weapons with psionics? Jason asked that question.
That is a very, very tricky question. Because you had sentient weapons that could overwhelm, even though they didn't go the psionic attack route, had the ability to effectively just sonically overwhelm their owner if the owner was not intelligent enough or failed certain things, but it worked outside the rules of psionics.
Yeah. Yeah, the total personality score thing. Yeah. Well, this in Dark Sun, there's a couple of different ways of making psionic items as opposed to magic items, and some are just making like a little stone, magical stone that gives you a +3 to something or allows you to manifest a power. But actual proper permanent psionic items are always deemed to be intelligent or to have an ego to some degree or another. So many of the more powerful psionic items are aware to on at least some level. And yeah, there are some really quite potent psionic items. There's a whole book on it, actually. The Psionic Artifacts of Athas.
Yeah, it's actually one of the slides that's coming through on our slideshow here, and it's a super cool book that we will be using. So yeah, the answer is yes. You can have items with psionic capabilities. Up in the chat earlier, there was another question that was asked. Oh yes, so I mentioned using psionics to disrupt a spellcaster. What have you seen in different rule sets for disrupting a psionicist? Now, you mentioned there's no speed rating, let's say, in 2E. So, is it taking them the 6 seconds of a typical round to concentrate and project? Is it instantaneous? And can it be disrupted either by virtue of physical pain or other mental attack? Obviously, psionicists can disrupt one another, but if it's a spell or a physical attack, can that disrupt the psionic concentration?
Generally speaking, no. Under second edition, it happens instantaneously. Initiative modifier is 0. You concentrate, and off it goes. And it's one of the major bonuses of psionics. So obviously, you can house rule that by if they're not able to properly concentrate, perhaps if they're suffering ongoing damage, you could easily add that in as a proviso that says if that's happening to you, then no, you can't focus the mind enough to make a psionic ability check or an attack or what have you. But that's something that you'll be adding in as a DM, because at least under second edition by the book, nope, there's very little thing you can do about it.
Yeah, and I get that. But I think, what I'm going to do, I've got several different books that I'm leveraging. This one was recommended to me by many people in the community of Dark Sun for, modifying 3.5 to play in that system, and it is by Green. Whoops, wrong set of slides. I just got rid of Vivi, which I didn't want to do. Hang on here. There we go, and there she's back. This is the Masterclass Third Era source book for Psionics Handbook, and it's by Green Ronin. This is actually, they put together a lot of good stuff, and it's highly recommended. So I'll look and see what they have in here in terms of how they handle, time to cast, disruption. But I would think, even when you look at the mindscape and you read the books and the way the mindscapes play out, these are not instantaneous actions. These are concentration, counter concentration that should also take, to me, a few seconds of the round. And it would make sense that either, if it's ongoing damage, as you said, I got hit by a, Melf's acid arrow, and, I'm still burning, or if that half giant just put his axe in the middle of my chest, and I took, 27 points of damage, the fact that I have no trouble concentrating and maintaining my psionics would seem to me not the right way to approach it. But it doesn't sound like you tweaked that in your homebrew system. You left that rule in place?
Yep, totally. Yeah. I think balance is a useful thing, but every now and then I do like to have things that crop up that that swing heavily one way or the other.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So I left that as is, but I can see it's something that you might want to deal with, especially if Psionics are going to be a large part of the game.
No, you bring up a good point, because I've often said I decry overmuch balance. I call that nerfing. I even like that a lot in the old systems, that you had classes that, if you look at a mage, a wizard with his D4 was, absolutely, squishy at first level in the old system. But if he ever managed to get to, level 10, level 12, he was a highly unbalanced character in that game. Conversely, your barbarian could start with that D12 and con bonuses. He might be ridiculously OP in Unearthed Arcana, edition D&D, and it wouldn't be balanced compared to it. But I think that I like those sorts of things in the game, and I wouldn't do it to Psionics just to make it balanced, but I want it to be also to some degree make sense. And I just that to me, like, how is a person concentrating with a battle axe in their chest? Vivi, what do you think?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mark. You first, then Vivi.
No, I was just going to agree. You want to have that feel of internal consistency, that kind of verisimilitude.
Right.
Absolutely.
Vivi, you have the final word on that.
I don't know. I think in regards to the way that Mark runs Dark Sun, like he said, like it's like Psionics is very well known and people don't fear it. Everyone just kind of knows. I think maybe that makes more sense for his campaign because it's something that is very prevalent. And I think with what you're saying, John, where you're saying like it's not as you don't want it to be as prevalent, maybe that does make more sense for you to kind of balance it out that way. I mean, again, it depends, like DM discretion, right? Like if I agree in that sense, like if you're like almost dying or something, like do you have enough concentration in you to kind of wean it out that last little bit? But maybe if you're high level and you're really, really, well versed in psionics and you know it really off the bat, like it's kind of like riding a bike almost, like even if you're kind of taking that hit, you could probably just like throw something out last minute. So depending on the DM and how they want to run the game.
Agreed. Robert, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think everything's been pretty much well said there. It's yeah, I mean it's tricky. It really goes to how you want to play out those psychic attacks. I think Siglin had mentioned, asked the question: is time different in the psychic realm versus the things, versus the real world? Does it what seems like 5 minutes and the psychic combat actually take place in 5 seconds in the real world? How aware is the psionicist or somebody engaged in psychic combat of what's going on around them? I mean, are they are they extra vulnerable to physical attacks when they're engaged in psychic combat? Are they seeing everything? Or because if you get into these like vivid mindscapes, there's kind of the assumption that they're working on that plane. It's almost like an extraplanar.
Yeah.
They're not really there. So how do you handle that? It brings up many questions.
No, actually, I like that, Rob. I think that's a, and I could see certain types of psychic combat. Maybe not every type of psionics that are engaged, but in certain settings, and you get two people locked in a mindscape. They are almost having an out of body experience, if you will, extremely vulnerable to physical attack and to be defended, by the rest of their party. I do like the history professor. By the way, really has been joining us a lot more lately. I think jumped in our Discord as well. Saw you active last night, but the axe in the chest acts as an antenna, concentrating all of one's psionic power to the opponent. I like
or
that.
Not.
Yeah, or not.
I agree.
But I think even like I could see psionic, certainly if the psionic attack is a flight of birds descending, into a crevice, that's not taking literally the amount of time that would take for birds to do that. But neither is it instantaneous. If I even tell you to take a deep breath, still your mind, imagine something, that's going to take a few seconds. I think it really fits nicely into a combat round. 6 seconds is time to concentrate and to project an image, to receive an image, to have that battle going back and forth. I think it fits nicely.
Yeah, well, I mean, under the original version of Psionics, from Eldritch Wizardry and then in AD&D, Psionics did take place in super rapid speed at the beginning of a combat round. So it was happening as this rapid fire flash of back and forth mental power. Then in later editions, it became just another action that you take in combat. But certainly, I want to say it was in 3rd edition, they abstracted it to something that happens in the astral plane. So your mind, these mindscapes and these back and forth combats are happening on the peripheries of astral space. So there's totally precedence for you having it abstracted from the material world.
Yeah.
And they talk about this a little bit in some of the Mindscape stuff. In the Dark Sun novels, you get these instances where someone gets psionically attacked, and like they see a monster coming at them, and it takes a few moments for them to perhaps realize that it's a mind thrust or an ego whip.
Right. Absolutely.
So you can have this idea where it's overlaid across the material world through some kind of psychic hallucination. So there's a lot of different approaches that you can choose when you refine and define your own take on the system.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, when you describe that, that's very similar to the way you see descriptions even in the sort of cyberpunk, future tech, Johnny Mnemonic, William Gibson. You're going to have, hallucinatory visualizations of digital attacks that are taking place on the psyche. I think that's a really cool way to run it. Go ahead.
It's kind of interesting on that point to bring in one more rule set. Castles and Crusades does not have psionics per se, but they do have the illusionist, and the illusionist in Castles and Crusades goes a lot more to the idea of it's all psychic damage. It's basically you're imposing something on somebody else's mind, making them think that they're being attacked to the point where it has a adverse physical, reaction to it.
Yeah, I know that, and I like that. And I think, Robert, that really goes all the way back to 1E illusion spells that could do literal physical damage based on your mental interpretation of the hallucinatory image, the phantasm that you were facing.
Now that you say that, but like that psychic attack with magic wouldn't cause you to use a round to prepare it. You would just be able to cast it immediately. Right?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean a round to prepare it, Vivi. What I'm saying is, in the round, it still takes the seconds in the round. So, to your point, the wizard pulls out his somatic component. Says his words, has his material. So it takes him a few seconds, and he casts the spell in that round.
Okay.
I'm saying in that. Yeah, no. I'm sorry if I was unclear. Forgive me. No,
I thought you meant like take a whole round to.
No. Yeah.
Like, that doesn't really make sense.
No. No.
Which, of course, John, that whole idea of illusions as being a psychic thing is one more reason why I always wondered why they bothered with psionics in the first place. Just like. It was like they kind of threw it on. I'd be, if there was a question that I would have loved to have asked, found out before he passed was, why did you throw psionics in the game? Because it just kind of tacked on, and
people did ask him that. His players asked for it. A couple. Is that
what it was?
Yeah, they were like big fans of science fiction stories of the era.
The comic books.
And so reluctantly he put it into. It first appears in Eldritch Wizardry, one of the supplements to the old box set, and then.
Oh, I have to go look for that. I have that somewhere around here.
Yeah, it was included in the player's handbook after that. And Gygax famously was like, I didn't really want to do it, but okay.
Yeah, and I think I would look at it, Rob, from my perspective. There's two things you look at. One, you got the mechanics question, like why bother with it if it's essentially the same as this? But I also look at it more from the story standpoint. Why do you have charisma-based sorcery magics as opposed to intelligence-based arcane magics? I think there's a good sort of story reason for it. Similarly, I think there's a good story reason for this idea that people have. Or creatures have the capability of projecting something that is not drawing on the arcane. It's not a spell that's memorized. There's no component to it. It's not a god that's giving it to them. It is the power of a mental attack. And then you figure out the mechanics to make it different enough that it's actually fun and flavorful in the game. And that's going to be my job to figure out how to do that in our game. Real quickly, a couple of announcements I want to make as we're kind of honing in here on the last few minutes. And Mark, this has been amazing. You're delightful to talk to.
A lot of fun.
How you're this cogent at 3:30 and 3:45 in the morning, I don't know.
Amazing.
We're all very impressed. But we do have coming up next week our Lore Master Arcanum. This is going to be a fun one. We're going to be joined by Michael of Pharaohborn Training, and we're doing a magic build battle. So many of you did the 3D build or the budget build battle with Ashlyn. This is going to be more of a mentally creative exercise. You're not going to be physically making something. This will be your chance to build along with Michael as he's going to show us his process for creating homebrew magic items, homebrew spells, homebrew rules, homebrew feats, ideas that you can really spice up your game. And he's really, really good at this. He's got, some umpteen number of 25,000 or something Instagram followers where he pushes out regular content like some of these items. You're going to have, it'll be a full hour and a half show, but we'll do a pre and a wrap up. There'll be 30 minutes during the show where you can build custom spells, items, monsters, etc. The top 3 entries, they'll all go into our Discord like we did with the budget build battle. Michael will gauge those and he's going to pick the winners, and we'll do some giveaways. And those of you that saw Michael when we had him on the first time, delightful guy. Super creative, doesn't just create the items, actually does all the artwork for his items as well. He's a talented artist and just a super fun guy. So please join us. It'll be next week at 5:30. It'll be the Magic Build Battle with Michael of Feralborn. Also want to mention there will be no Tears of Air this weekend. We have 2 party members that are out on Sunday, so we're not going to run the game, but we will have Fall of Red Dawn that afternoon, so there'll still be a Blue Box stream on Sunday. And then, of course, Friday Night Crusades will be happening on Friday night, led by Phantom NJ here, your Castle Keeper. And then we have one more one-shot in April, the month of one-shots, being run by Josh, NPC Voices. He'll be running his one-shot on Tuesday night next week. And then right after that, it is the following week. It is May 2nd, and we launch the Sea of Dark Sun and all the work that's gone into that. So lots of exciting things coming up here on Blue Box. Mark your calendar. Yes, 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 Tracy, I am also excited. Discord link is right there below you, History Professor. Go ahead and jump in there. Once you get in, just make sure you go to the welcome area. I think you got to hit a check mark so you can post and see all the channels. But
Rules.
Yeah, all the rules. Thank you. In the rules area, you click that check mark. It kind of gives you our core values and tells you about, kind of the rules that you have to obey inside the channel. But once you're in, you've got the general chat. The Blue Box Tavern is kind of a catch-all. Lots of activity in there, but you'll see all the channels to the left. They include campaign-specific channels. So if you want to read about Tears of Air or Greyhawk Awakening or Fall of Red Dawn, you got a Friday Night Crusade set of channels down there. You've got a Lore Masters Arcanum set of channels, and you can jump in there and enjoy any of that content. Thank you very much, Jason, for the gift sub. And actually, it is Lupus is the gentleman I was mentioning earlier. Actually reached out to me last night, and just the generosity of this community and willing to help in any way possible. It's always humbling. Obeying the Psionics rules. Yes, that's exactly what you must do, Sam Curtis. All right, I've got a few more questions here, but let me just pause again. Mark, anything you wanted to dive into before I ask Vivi and Robert if they have any other questions?
No, this has been great. I'm just enjoying the whole vibe here. This is really cool. So yeah, you crack on.
All right, thank you. Vivi, crank on. What else would you like to ask?
Going back to psionic items, do you have a favorite psionic item?
Ooh, from the psionic artifacts of Athos, give us your favorite.
The Jade Marquess, I believe it's called. It's a ship. I mean, it's clearly ripped, bleeding from Michael Moorcock, the ship that sails on land and sea. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why it gets my heart, really. And it's this giant jade vessel that goes on the land and on the Sea of Silt. And it's a psionically aware ship with a whole variety of powers and curses, but it changes size as well. So it can be a small little rowboat or a giant galleon, and it's just such a great idea. Yeah, I love it.
Have you ever?
It's either that. No, I haven't. So I'm gonna have to. And it's either that or a magic tongue.
Okay.
Yeah. This revolting black tongue that's you can. Like attach
Vivi,
if you're missing a tongue.
Choose myself now.
Clucking tongues? What is?
You said magic tongue. I saw Vivi's eyes flash. So
This is why Josh misses me on Tuesday.
Oh,
yes. Trust me.
You can't even blame that on Josh. I mean, this John gave himself trouble.
Oh, yeah, and the whole crew on like Ashlyn and Manda, like it's gonna. I'm gonna have to corral the cats, no doubt, in that one.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, no doubt. doubt. Yeah, you should have seen it last night, no doubt. It was, yes. Stop it. Fraley said, stop it, Vivi. Robert, any final questions you have before I kind of wrap up with a few of mine?
Go back to that question. I mean, you mentioned a few already. Favorite, monsters in terms of psionics?
So apart from the hunting cactus, I really do enjoy the Nightmare Beast. It's like a kind of a top level Dark Sun monster, huge Tarrasque-esque monstrosity just in physical combat, the thing is dealing out hundreds of points of damage around with, it's called like Vorpal teeth and all sorts of awful stuff. But one of the nice things about it is it presages its arrival by about a week, that people in the area start getting nightmares. So they start getting horrible dreams, waking up. It disrupts spell memorization, spell preparation, all this kind of lead up to an encounter with this awful psionic monstrosity. So I love the kind of the portent of doom that comes along with the Nightmare Beast.
Vorpal teeth and psionic attacks.
It's just a monster.
It is, and yes, that is one of the Tailspire assets that I've had created. It is one of the minis. It's not so mini that Fraley is printing and painting. Those things are absolutely sick. They're one of my favorite monsters in any form of D&D setting.
So let me know when you play that first, and then I'll come and.
John decides he needs new art. We'll bring out the big creature.
That's right. Yeah.
At the party.
Yeah. Next time Hob is low on funds, the Nightmare Beast comes out. Right. Hob is my artist. I have her Mark do a lot of our custom character art, and so every time like we have characters die or have a TPK or a new campaign, she enjoys it. So yeah, the Fraley said the Nightmare Beast. Let's just say he takes a lot of resin to make. So he's
good to know.
he's a big boy. Great questions. Yes, May 2nd. It is coming. May 2nd. I'll play the trailer here in a second as well before we wrap up. So another question I had for you here, Mark, is you talked about, in the setting, the different types of psionics, and this is from Bell of Souls South, Bell of Softs, whatever. And they talk about the psionic spread in every major city-state, and Nibide having the School of Augurs, Balik, the Celebron, secret organizations and hidden mountains, the Order. Talk to us about how you've played some of these orders or schools or settings in any of your games, and any tips that you might have.
So the Order of Psionicists, known as the Order, ended up being a fairly major set of antagonists through our campaign. And I took the idea of the Elan from the Complete Psionics Handbook, and I think it's Paizo's version of Dark Sun that pitches them as constructs made by the Order to infiltrate the various cities of Athas, and ran with that. So the discovery that there's a kind of weird body snatcher vibe going on where we had them bleeding white blood, so you kill someone and they don't bleed red, and then you start to realize actually that these weird psionic clones have infiltrated your city, and the counselor you thought was a counselor has actually been replaced by an Elan, and then it gets unveiled to be a member of the Order, and then that leads into the Dragon's Crown adventure. So that gave us this whole sort of paranoid element to the game, leading into a big multi-part 16-session adventure it took us to run through that thing. On the less kind of covert level, the School of Thought in Tyr, which is where the game was based, the characters use them more as assets and allies, and leveraging political power in order to get access to the school and win its help in various situations. And I think this is an important part of the setting where I think you and I talked about this actually. You can use the existence of these psionic schools to reinforce the inherent class divides that are central to the Dark Sun game, so that although psionics is prevalent and everyone has wild talents, only the rich and the powerful actually can afford psionic schooling. So it becomes another way to reinforce that stratification of society that gives the Dark Sun setting its kind of oppressive feel. With the second season, the Order has suffered a massive setback, and is kind of splintered, is in schism, and that gives us this a really rich set of I suppose post catastrophe scenarios that you can use, where you have renegade order members running off and trying to carve out their own fiefdoms, or trying to get their own pet projects that were previously forbidden up and running, and how does the world of Athas react now that it's become common knowledge that there was this order of psionicists known as the Order who infiltrated them and were up to all sorts of no good, and that allows the setting itself to respond to these large-scale, behind-the-scenes movers and shakers.
No, I love that, and I definitely see some things there that I could weave in. Thank you for that. We have a question, and then we're going to do a couple wrap-up points, but let me go ahead and, for those that have not seen it yet, let me play our Dark Sun trailer coming up here on 5.2. We have custom, I mentioned last night, custom artwork, custom music, custom miniatures, terrain, assets, VTT tabletops, physical terrain generation, digital terrain generation, and a great storyline. The players have just poured themselves into so much of the character creation. These PCs are so well developed. I am very proud of the players. It's going to be an incredible campaign. That night, I'll be giving away a box set here, the Dark Sun box set, originally from 91. It's a full and complete box set. And then I think I'm going to save it for the second session. I've mentioned to you, Mark, that we have a friend of the channel, pops on, helped us, did an LMA with us, joined our charity stream, Richard Baker. And I reached out to Richard about this. He's actually had a shrink-wrapped dragon's crown in his basement that he's going to unshrink wrap it and he's going to sign it. And I'm going to give that away probably on the second session, so on 5.9. So we're going to have two really big items to give away, both to attract people. You know, why do we do this? To attract people into the stream, but also to give back to the community. And these are all things that ultimately are contributed or given by others. And we kind of share the wealth and share the settings. And we're looking forward to doing that in those two streams. So make sure you join us. We'll do the drawings for the names throughout the course of the stream to acknowledge those people who are on early and middle. And then we'll do the giveaways toward the latter part of the stream. All right, Mark. What you say your final thoughts here? If you're a DM, then let's just you've got me here, but I know there are others. There's been a lot of support for this setting, even in my Discord. People who remember it fondly, people who played it years ago. I'm sure there are going to be many others that are going to kick off, Dark Sun games over time. If you're a GM. And you're thinking about starting a Dark Sun setting, and maybe you're intimidated by all the lore and all the things you have to learn, and even the topic tonight of psionics, or how to run defiling wizards, or what advice would you have to a new dungeon master that wants to start a Dark Sun game?
So I would go back to the original box set. All the lore that's accumulated over the years and the various additional bits of rules, none of those were there. To begin with, and if you go to the original box set, there's a few modifications to the classes, a few monsters, a few modifications to the spells, some cool equipment, and then this thing called the Wanderer's Journal, which is a separate book within the box, which is just a kind of in-setting view of the setting by this character called the Wanderer, and he describes the landscape and the creatures and the society and what have you. And it's 60-something pages? I can't even remember, but it's a slim little book. And that piece of writing is one of the most evocative, immersive pieces of writing in all of D&D's history. And you'll see this recommended over and over and over again, that just go read the Wanderer's Journal. And it's that little book alone that really sparked most people's fascination with and love for Dark Sun. So you don't actually need all this extra stuff. All this various weird secrets and lore of the setting didn't come along until later. The original box set doesn't answer any of those questions. It doesn't even ask any of them. It just presents this broken world and gives you enough to go ahead and make it your own. So although in the games that I'm running now, I have leaned into all the lore, that was part of the original conceit of running it on the channel, which was I'm going to run a kind of by the book, for the most part, Kanan adherent Dark Sun game. But in my home games, I don't use any of that stuff, and I wasn't even aware of most of it for the first few years of having Dark Sun. And I just took the Wanderer's Journal and made it my own. And I think that's the approach that all DMs should take. Don't feel like you need to keep to the rules of the Cleansing Wars or the Sorcerer Kings or the Warbringer or weird stuff about Halfling biotech or anything like that. There's enough in that Wanderer's Journal to spark a dozen campaigns. So yeah, don't be intimidated by what's out there. Start at the beginning and see what that gives you.
That is a fantastic answer. I think that is absolutely great advice for anyone, and thank you for that, Mark. I have maybe one final question, but let me go back to Vivi and Rob one last time. Anything you guys would like to ask before we get ready to raid?
No, I'm good.
I would like to ask Mark, what is your favorite thing about Dark Suns, and maybe your least favorite thing about Dark Suns?
So my favorite thing is what John here just mentioned, is the Dragon King's book. That is hands down. I love that thing because it takes high level gaming and basically says, look, this is the natural end game to a Dark Sun campaign. Fighters attracting armies, thieves becoming patrons of vast empires, transformation into these advanced beings. I love the idea that you have just these monstrous forces at work in the world, and although they might never feature up close and personal in your game, they're there, and they determine the nature and structure of the entire world from the top down. And I love the way that the setting is kind of built in that way. My least favorite, I was really kind of surprised by discovering what the written backstory was at the time. That it was once a blue world.
Yeah, that surprised me too. Yeah,
I was like, what, halflings? What? Because that comes out in the novel series, and where I was living at the time, you couldn't get the novels. And it was years of playing Dark Sun before I finally got to read them all, and I was like, this is garbage. And I've come to kind of, have an acceptance of it and a fondness for it now. But at the time, I was like, halflings? No.
Well, and I don't like that either, and I've jettisoned that, and that's what works so well for me here, because you don't have that backstory or that lore for the world. But
right, yeah.
But now, biotech halflings, no.
Yeah. I think it's got I do enjoy it now, and there are plenty of ways that you can make it work. But if I had to pick something at the time, it would have been that. I've got to be honest. Yeah.
So I'm showing the Wanderer's Journal now, and one of the questions I didn't get to ask earlier was, and I'm showing one of the, Dark Sun dragons are just different. They're wicked cool, and the model that was done by Gloomy Kids is the one that I've got a print of, and I've got it also in Tailspire. It's incredible. But the question was, have you ever used an active agency of a Dragon King in one of your games? What role has a Dragon King, or there is actually one Dragon Queen, also in the original setting, if I'm remembering correctly. What role have they played? Two? How have they played in your games?
Yeah, lots. The opening adventure, Freedom, features a showdown with a larval Dragon King trying to ascend in power. We have had encounters up close and personal with 3 others in conversational kind of situations, and then one later on in a fight. He got bucketed. And then the dragon itself has featured a couple of times in our game. One of those ended really, really badly for the characters, and so did the other one, actually. But
as it should.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Mark, it's been a delight. And I know it's super late your time, but thank you for spending the time with us. Really look forward to you launching your new game. Look forward to having you hopefully on at some other point. I'll have to figure out a way to do. Yeah. I'll run a Lore Masters Arcanum at 3 a.m. my time. I won't have any viewers, but I'll accommodate you for that.
I mean, Robert's an insomniac, and I used to work nights, so it'll be fine.
It'll be the 4 of us just talking to ourselves.
Sitting there and chatting.
That's okay.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a great time. I really love being on the show. it's
No.
very cool. Such a great vibe.
Thank you very much. And the chat loved you. A lot of support in the chat. So as we get ready to raid our good friend Lord Gazumba, I want to remind all of you here at Blue Box that we have one question for you. If you've been watching the stream tonight and you're not a follower, if you're a follower and you've not subscribed, did you know that's free with Amazon Prime? Or if you're a sub, I know, or if you're a sub whose sub has expired. No, it cannot be. We have one question for you here tonight on Blue Box. What are you doing? Come on, give us a follow, give us a sub. And we appreciate all the support. We are super excited here with all the things that we have going on. And as always, go ahead.
So we have a question about how to sub with Amazon Prime quickly before we raid.
Yeah, so if you go into Amazon Prime, you click into your there's actually a Twitch tab in your settings you can go to, and you select a free sub in your settings on Amazon Prime. Now, I do believe you have to do that each month. So it doesn't auto resub for you. You actually have to go in and do it once each month. I think that's how it works. Go ahead, Rob.
So I don't remember having to do anything on the Amazon site. You might have to do the first time. It's on the Twitch page. You have to redo it every month.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. Gotcha. Well, that's better then. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us. As always, thank you to my two amazing co-hosts. Vivi, it's so good having you on this show. You're much better than Robert and I. I think we're going to just have you start running it, and we're just going to sit back and watch.
No. I like asking questions.
Thank you to all of you Mad Chatters. You guys rock. We'll see you this weekend. Raiding Lord Gazumba now.